Hi, I'm Dr. Alegria Rivadeneira. I'm an associate professor of Spanish and the head of the Foreign Languages program at Colorado State University, Pueblo. Like many institutions, we strive to serve students coming from diverse linguistic backgrounds, and today I want to share some ideas and approaches that have worked well for us, hoping that they work well for you. So in this, our third video, we are going to talk about 10 activities for a content-based heritage language second language learner class. That would be a mixed class. And in the previous videos, we talked about the 3 pillars for a strong program. On the first video, we talked about the 12-point checklist for a successful mixed class on the second video. And now this one is going to focus on content-based learning. For the examples that I will be giving you, I'm going to be talking about a non-literature content-based course that I designed under Heritage Language Teaching Principles. And then I'm going to share 10 activities that can be adapted to any topic and can work very well on a mixed class. And we will analyze the activities a little bit so you see how it is that they can work well. So let's start with content-based instruction. This is a definition that you can find at the National Heritage Language Resource Center website. We talked about this wonderful organization on our first video, and they say that for content-based instruction, what happens is that students use a subject such as social studies or biology as a way to learn a language. Tasks targeting speaking, listening, reading, and writing come from the subject matter being studied rather than from grammar books or language textbooks. So remember on the first video we were talking about how we sometimes get really comfortable with grammar and we just keep teaching grammar. Not that grammar is a bad thing, but after a while we really need to exercise the language skills of our students, and the best way to do it is through content-based instruction. And you can have a whole course that is content-based, like the one I'm going to talk about, or you can have units that have content and then you work with that content. So this is hopefully something that is going to help you in whichever type of class you would be developing. So the question would be, what can that content be, especially if you're going to create a whole class like that? You may remember on the first video we talked about how not all students love literature, though some of us might love it so much and we can't believe nobody else likes it. But that is the truth. And we have to consider that a lot of our students are going to use those language skills outside academia on many different types of contexts. So if we can offer courses that expand their language skills on different contexts and on different areas, then they are just going to be that much more prepared for the world. So if you were going to design a whole course or a unit, and you were wondering, well, what content do I want to use? You could think of things such as, what do you like to do on your free time? Or what were some of your own favorite classes in college? Or what do you read about when you pick up a magazine or surf online? Or what topics interest your students? The reason why you have to have this thought process is because you're going to be spending a lot of time developing content for this class. So it should be something that you're excited about, and also something that you think your students are going to appreciate and be excited about as well. So a lot of my colleagues become very afraid when I talk about creating a content course or a content unit outside of literature. But the truth is that you don't need to be an expert in the subject, because your goal is linguistic and you are an expert in language acquisition. So in a way, the text, the content, is a pretext for growing your students' language proficiency. That is, it gives you stuff to talk about and write about and read about. And so whatever that context is, that content is, it is just a pretext. So you don't have to be an expert on whatever content it is that you want to showcase for your students to exercise their language skills. So we had talked about the ACTFL rating scale, but I thought I should mention it very quickly again so it can help us situate all the activities that I'll be talking about. So as you may remember, we're talking about an inverted pyramid because as students grow in proficiency, they also grow in the breadth of their knowledge. So there's so much more to know to become an intermediate, and to become an advanced there is so much more to know. And so it's important for us to remember that interacting with the language and exercising your language skills is going to help you reach that breadth for the next level. So at intermediate level, as we had talked about before in video 1, we want our students to create with the language, initiate, maintain, and bring to a close simple conversations, ask questions, describe and narrate in the present. So these are the functions that we're trying to have them do: asking questions, describing, narrating in the present. You can do that about any topic. So this is where that content would come in. Talking about context and content. So in the context of some informal settings, limited transactional activities, and the content of predictable familiar topics related to daily activities. So these are topics that we can be exploring through this content. Accuracy, we're talking about somebody being understood with some repetition by speakers accustomed to dealing with non-native speakers. Well, they can do this. They can work on this under any content. And discrete sentences, of course, under any content. Let's move to advanced, because though this might take a while to get anybody to advanced, we want to be targeting those advanced level functions so students get better at it. So in advanced, we are looking under global tasks or functions to narrate and describe in major time frames, deal effectively with an unanticipated complication. So imagine if you have to narrate and describe in major time frames, you can do that in any type of content. Talking about context and content. Well, most informal and some formal settings, and the topics of general and personal interest. So talking about topics of general and personal interest, this certainly falls outside of literature. There are so many topics we can talk about, and we want them to become proficient. And so this is our opportunity when we are introducing content into the classroom. Accuracy, we're talking about them being understood without difficulty by speakers unaccustomed to dealing with non-native speakers, and we're looking for paragraphs as a text type. So great content can really elicit more accuracy and, of course, a text type that goes beyond the sentence, such as a good paragraph. At superior level, again, very hard to reach superior. As I had mentioned in video 1, you can even be a native speaker and not be a superior speaker, but this doesn't mean that we don't strive for it. So at superior level, we discuss topics extensively, support opinions and hypothesize, speak in the abstract, deal with linguistically unfamiliar situations. Well, if you're exploring content, then you are certainly going to be exposed to this. And I will give you some really good examples, I think, from the class that I put together for my students. Content and context, most formal and informal setting, wide range of general interest topics and some special fields of interest and expertise. So here is where we can see that content really needs to continue to grow in order for you to grow in your language proficiency. For accuracy, we're looking at no patterns of errors, and for text type, extended discourse. Of course, you can do this with any type of content, especially if it's content that is interesting for the students. So let me talk about this class that I put together for my students when I wanted to do something that wasn't not literature, but that would exercise their language skills at a higher degree and beyond grammar. So I decided to create a class on health and well-being in the Spanish-speaking world. The reason I wanted to do it is because I love health and well-being. I love to exercise and eat well, and I also thought that that was something that my students could relate to, because this is in daily conversations, things like these come up, and also maybe help them a little bit about thinking on taking care of themselves, and further than that, getting them to think about the different cultural aspects of health and well-being when we're talking about different groups of people from different cultures. So this was the course that I created, and let me tell you what this course was not. Because I looked at certain books thinking maybe I could use a book and save myself some work, But when I started looking at books of medical Spanish or things about health in Spanish, all these books were grammar textbooks in disguise. That's what they were. And you can see it on this table of content. Greeting new patients. Oh yeah, hellos, goodbyes. Making appointments. Times, numbers, discussing how patients feel, the daily routine. They're going to be doing reflexive verbs. So when I opened these books, they actually had a ton of grammar in them. I'm not against grammar. I am just saying that if we take this approach through content-based learning, students, while trying to deal with the content, then they can go back and look at some of the grammar that they had learned if they were second language learner, or that they already implicitly know, but maybe they need to refine as heritage language learners. So the course objectives for this course were first to exercise my students' language skills by providing ample opportunities for language practice of intermediate high to superior function, so oral and written, but also listening and speak in writing as well. So then I also wanted to push my students to reach the actual intermediate high or above proficiency depending on where they were. So I wanted to create activities that could really help anybody develop their language proficiency regardless of what level they were in. I wanted to engage my students in the 5 C's, so communicating about health and well-being, exploring the cultures of health and well-being, making connections of language and culture and health and well-being, making comparisons of the different cultures that they are exposed to and how we approach health and well-being in different ways, and talking within the community about these things, not only the community in the classroom, but I actually sent them out into the world to do some really fun projects so they could be part of a larger community. I also wanted them to hone their reading comprehension skills and enrich their language through the reading of authentic newspaper and magazine articles from various regions. Authentic materials are materials that are created for native speakers. And this may be really scary, but as you will see, if we do some scaffolding, our students can understand these materials. And not only that, but when they're out in the world, they're not going to have this materials that were written just for second language learners. They're going to be dealing with authentic materials. And we want to give them the tools so they can, in fact, deal with these materials and work through them and understand them. And the last point for my class was I wanted them to become more aware of the social, cultural, and idiosyncratic phenomena that affect the lives of people in Latin America, the United States, and Spain when it comes to health and well-being. So that was really the only one about content that I was hoping that they would take in as well. So let's look at the course components. You can see how varied they are. I had talked on the previous video about the importance of a syllabus that has many, many items so students can excel in different ways. So we had class participation and preparation. They had reading and vocabulary journals. There were good scaffolding type activities that also helped them gain points by doing work and just completing it. So very low stakes type of assessment. They had to do country presentation activity, a disease research activity, a nutritionist project, a home remedies project, a show and tell project, and a final project. So you can already see that this was a very project-based type class. And then they had some tests as well. So this really gave students a lot of opportunities to excel. So how did the course look? Well, on the one hand, daily we would have readings and discussions, flash writings, jigsaw activities, and progress checks, all based on the things that they were reading, on the authentic materials they were reading, and that sort of set the routine of the class. But then, alongside this routine, the students were doing different projects. And so part of the class would be dedicated for the discussions of the readings, but then another section of the class would be dedicated for them to work in their projects, either with partners or on their own, depending on the project. So some of the topics that we explored in this class were very interesting. Who's not interested on this? I know everybody has had talks about this at the dining room table with their friends. General health, nutrition, our food, our water, malnutrition, eating disorders, physical fitness, exercise and sports, disabilities, quests for beauty, rest, stress, mental health, spirituality, beliefs. I want you to look at these topics and think how rich they can be when you actually start comparing the Spanish speaking societies with Anglo societies and how different these things can be. So, things like family planning, childbearing, abortion, the elderly, hospitals, doctors, curanderos, technology, politics, and the economy really came to play when we were doing things about comparing and contrasting, which exercises language skills in amazing ways. So we could talk about things such as raising children in different ways. And this always gets a chuckle from my students, especially my heritage language learners who sadly know La Chancleta. Um, and so we could discuss about how we rear children in these different cultures. Other topics about parenting and helicopter parents was a great topic that was really interesting to a lot of them, especially for my heritage language learners, because most of them are first generation, and so they don't understand this whole helicopter parent paradigm that has become the norm on other universities in our country. Or gender roles, such as these, where being a woman in the home taking care of the house and the babies seems to be the most important mission of a woman, and how does that feel fit culturally into a different society where there are other values as well. So very, very interesting conversations that we were able to have. So let me share with you 10 activities. These activities, I will give you examples of the course, but truly they can be adaptable to any type of content that you decided to use in your classes. So these are our 10 activities, and we'll go through them one by one. But just so we can start thinking about them, we're going to talk about reading and vocabulary journals, guided group discussions, flash writings, flyers and brochures, essay exams, research and share through jigsaw activities, reports, interviews, creating a class book, and doing a video project where they report and speak. So let's look through these and see how you can use them in your own classes. Reading and vocabulary journals. So this type of activity provides authentic readings on each theme so our students can acquire background knowledge and vocabulary on the topic in order to then participate in the discussions about that topic, complete tasks, activities, and projects. So one of the things that I did is I would find out a good article that was not too hard, and they are out there. There are articles written for different levels of native speakers as well, just like USA Today writes for a certain level of English versus the New York Times. So do many articles out there for topics on health and well-being. So you just comb through it and find them. And so then you want to do a reading journal, because the reading journal helps guide their reading, and so this is good scaffolding. It helps them extract main ideas, and it helps them select their own vocabulary needs, and of course prepare for class discussion. So let me show you how these look like. So here's a reading they were doing. This one was Obesity in Latin America, Are We the Heaviest in the World? Straight out of the web. You can see it's not too long, but it is an authentic article. And then I would give them these reading and vocabulary journals. In these, you can find several areas. The questions try to target some specific things that I want them to pull from the readings, and so it helps them get the main ideas by answering these questions. You also can see that I have little vocabulary squares. So here I would actually ask my students to pick their own vocabulary words, because when you have such a diverse class, you don't know if those students are going to know the vocabulary words that you may think are very simple, or which ones you would want to pick for them, right? So each student can pick their own vocabulary words that they think are useful for them or necessary to write about the topic. And then the second set of questions are questions more about opinions and discussion. When they bring this to class after having had that reading, then they have already processed a lot of the information and a lot of the vocabulary, so then they can come and use it in class. And this takes me to the second activity, a guided pair or group discussion. So on these discussions, you want to provide conversation topics and prompts that are based on the topics and the readings of the class. And so they can recycle vocabulary, practice functions. Remember the functions of ACTFL, things such as narrating and describing in time frames, asking questions, expressing opinions, and hypothesizing. The students don't know I'm doing ACTFL functions, but this is how I get them to grow in their proficiency. So the scaffolding for something like this needs to be well thought out, and it is very important to have in order to get a lot of quality type conversations and discussions. So having pre-speaking prompts on the board help, having the conversations in a pair before they share with the whole class, so then they get a chance to get their ideas organized, gather their vocabulary, and then share with the whole class instead of asking directly to the students cold, and then you get such short, scared person type answers. And then of course sharing with the class as a whole. And so on guided pair discussions, I could ask things about obesity in Latin America, and I would first ask them, just to get them all warmed up, discuss all the questions from your questionnaire and share your vocabulary with your partner. And so this gets them going, more comfortable talking. And then you can go a little higher and say things like, so what factors contribute to childhood obesity, and what do you think about this? And so now that they have been playing with vocabulary, they can go ahead and develop the topic even more. And then why not a hypothesis? So show something like a statistic and say, so why these countries? Why don't you discuss that with your group or your pair? And then we'll discuss it as a whole in the class. And so this brings in more and more language exercising. And you can even go higher and ask for opinions. So what is your opinion regarding the obesity epidemic? Who is to blame? How should we solve this problem? What would the benefits be to society? Now, this may seem like very high questions, but I think that even an intermediate student can answer them. They may answer shorter and not as sophisticated, but they could begin to grow on their language proficiency if they do it. Now, somebody who is more advanced would be expanding this so much more, but these are the type of questions that you see on news programs where people of superior capabilities regarding language answer these questions, including our president. So of course these are types of questions can target any type of level. So talking about differentiation, you can see differentiation is built in here because students can work at their own level, especially if you do your pairings carefully. The third activity I want to share with you is flash writing. So flash writing is when students are asked to write something from a one-word prompt in 5 minutes, and it helps activate vocabulary, practice writing skills, and narrate and describe. Great functions to have. And there are some added perks. You can collect flash writing for formative assessment to see how your students are doing, who is where, what can you do for them, what can you suggest they do for themselves. And then also you can have them write them again, but with the corrections, and include them in a portfolio, so then they get a chance to rewrite little short things that are not too overwhelming and really concentrate on some things they may be needing to work on. And this would be dependent on the student, so there is differentiation built in there as well. So this is how a flash writing prompt looks in my class. I say flash writing, and the word would be anything you want to say. Food, hunger, friendship. And then take 6 minutes to write anything that comes to mind when you hear the word friendship, food, whatever. You can write a microstory, an anecdote, poem, recipe, joke, thought, whatever you want. This gives them a lot of creativity, and you can also see how differentiation would work in here, because somebody could write something very sophisticated, and somebody could write something very simple. I had a heritage, a native speaker in one of my classes who was a poetry buff. And so he loved writing poems, and he would always take the opportunity to do so here. So imagine, this is how he was developing his language skills and abilities. Number 4 is creating a flyer or brochure. So for this type of activity, students create a flyer or brochure to inform others about an issue or organization, or to offer solutions to problems. And I think this is great because it really helps them condense a lot of information and extract what is most important, which is a high cognitive function. So that is wonderful. And you can give them some prompts on how to do the flyers so they can really concentrate on what you want. So you can tell the students, okay, provide me with a description of whatever it is that you want them to explore, a mission statement, a list of, and you have them create these so they can recycle vocabulary, learn to recognize main ideas, have an artistic outlet. Some of them love doing this. For those visual learners, this is fun, and develop linguistic and cognitive functions, as I had said before. So here are some of my students creating flyers for different things that would help others in the community. And here is an example of how I would ask them to create a flyer. So I would tell them, flyer to help people facing the loss of a loved one. Include a slogan, include an explanation or definition of the problem, include the stages of grief, at least 4 symptoms, and 3 pieces of advice. And so when they do this, when they have a very clear mission on what to do, they can come up with these beautiful, beautiful type of flyers that in a way are an authentic task. And this is an important thing to think about. We want to have our students be doing things that they could do in real life for a real organization. And so this is something real, and I think that it really elicits a lot of good language when they are putting it together. So activity 5, taking an essay exam. Well, unlike short answer or fill in the blank tests, an essay exam gives students the opportunity to write paragraphs, narrate, describe, hypothesize, express opinions, recycle vocabulary, show off their learning. And this sometimes seems a very scary prospect for some instructors, to just give them such an open task to do, but I think your students can really surprise you if you let them do it. And this is definitely exercising their language skills in within context, instead of filling in the blanks and doing things that are not real activities, real life activities. So scaffolding becomes very important on something like this. And I think that the questions need to be very specific and break down all the parts that should be included in the essay, because then students can just go by one and really excel at the activity. So let me show you some examples of how I would create questions. So this was my solutions question, and I would just change the topics around. Choose one of these topics and do the following. Define the problem. This is sort of describing and narrating actual functions, so this is great. Explain what groups are affected. Again, you are doing a function. Share some of the causes of this problem. Share some of the effects of this problem, and make a proposal to improve the situation. So there you're having to show opinions and even hypothesize on how things would be for your proposal, right? So there are the topics: shortage of doctors in rural areas in Latin America, the growth of the elderly population in Latin America and the USA, or child abuse. And then they can just answer all those different parts. Same thing for my for or against question. So here you would say, choose one of these topics and do the following. And again, you have steps. Explain what the controversy is regarding this topic. Mention some of the points in favor. Mention some of the points against. Explain your position. Propose solutions to solve the controversy. For those of you familiar with ACTFL, this sounds an awful lot like a superior speaker type prompt. And why not? Why not have our students give it a try, even if they are at intermediate level? So, child labor, population control. Great topics that have pros and cons and things that our students had been reading about, and now they had a chance to talk about and exercise their language skills while doing that talking and writing. So this is how their essay exams can look when you give them the different steps, because you can tell them, you can think of each one of these as a paragraph. And paragraph writing is an advanced type of ability in the ACTFL guidelines, so we want to push for that. The next activities that I'm going to show are project-based learning. They are all projects, and in a project-based assignment, students pursue an in-depth investigation of a question or problem that is important to them. Students work to acquire the language skills they need to complete a project. So this is a macro approach. It's not students learning all these little pieces and grammar pieces over and over and over again, and then having them try to figure out a bigger project from those little pieces. But actually, you give them the big piece, you give them the end result, because a lot of them already have the language skills to do it, but maybe not all of them. They may not have all the language skills they need. So they have their product, and now they have to fill in the blanks or the holes that they need in order to complete the project. So this is a macro approach that I think is very useful to heritage language learners, but I would argue also for second language learners, because when they're trying to complete a project, learning some of those grammar points becomes important and useful to them, and it is within a context. So now it makes sense to learn these things so they can complete their project. So number 6, the activity number 6, a project that I had them do, or you could do and adapt to any type of topic, is sort of a research and sharing type project with jigsaw activities. So you figure out the topic, and then each student researches one aspect of the topics. And then they fill on a guide sheet. Guide sheets are very important because it helps with scaffolding. And then they come prepared to share with the class. And you can take this so far. And let me show you how that works. So I did a disease research and jigsaw activity, and it was a 1-week project. For this project, students had to pick a disease to study. They had to write a report and present to the group. This report, by the way, was written with a little worksheet that gave them all the parts that they needed to include about the disease. I think I have an example of that coming up. And then in class, through a jigsaw activity, students had to learn about the other diseases. So they sat on tables and each one told them, and I'll show you how that went. And then in class, students in groups give a disease to a mock patient and then hand the patient to another group for diagnosis. And so this really encourages them to listen to all the other diseases, so then they can diagnose not only the one that they studied, but the ones that the other students presented. So let me show you how this looked. So, but before I do that, I want to talk about some of the global tasks that they would be acquiring. So they're describing and narrating in major time frames. They're hypothesizing, and they're going to support opinions. All great ACTFL functions that help exercise language skills. In the content and context, they're going to enrich their language within a special field of interest, this one being diseases, and also they're going to write and speak in a formal register because they are acting like doctors. And then on the text type, they're going to write and speak at a paragraph level. So this was the little worksheet that they had to fill. Everybody got a different disease, but everybody had to look at the same aspect of the disease. This is a good scaffolding type activity, because this helps them edit all the information that they're getting into categories and then come prepared for class. Then you put them together in groups, and everybody gets a listening sheet. I think these are really important because it forces the students to take notes and categorize their notes in different places, because then they're going to have to take the sheet and report it to another group. So they want to have some notes with them, and their sheet is also part of their assessment. And I have found out that if you just tell them to listen and take notes on their own, they might not take very good notes, or they might just listen, or go into la la land and then they can't remember anything. So this really keeps them on task, I think. It works really well for me. And so the presentations are done in groups. So I would put group, depending on the amount of students, you can put set tables of, let's say, 5, and you have 5 tables like that of 5 students. You have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 each show and share their research on that one particular illness. So now everyone in the table has heard of 5 illnesses, right? But there are 25 illnesses as a whole. So now how do you get all 25 people to hear all the illnesses? Well, then you move all the ones with the ones, the twos with the twos, the threes with the threes, etc. And then, for example, number 1, who listened to all the diseases in his or her table, now has to tell them the rest of the table about those diseases. So everybody needs to inform everybody else, and now they have to continue filling this out. This is an activity that elicits so much talking, because now they are trying to really transmit information for the purpose of then giving a patient a disease and diagnosing it. So they fill in their charts, look at that, and apparently somebody didn't bring their paper. Nobody says this is going to be perfect. All the students are not going to be perfect, but of course, you try your best. And so then I gave them a patient, and they had to play with this patient and give them different symptoms for them, the other group, to guess who was sick with what. And they did that on their groups, as you can see, just having a great time working on this. And then you can see they were really having a good time. After they did that, they passed on the patient to somebody else, and then they had to try to diagnose it and justify the reason why this person had that disease. For assessment, you can see that there are varying types of assessment in here, or various items for the assessment. This is also a differentiation type of tool, because different students can excel at different things. So there was the worksheet. Everybody, if they work hard, if they fill it, they can have it. Low stakes assessment, nothing wrong with that. But they also can have a paper for those who are better at writing. Maybe then that's going to be their forte. The presentation, that's going to be better for those who speak better. The chart and the diagnostic sheet, and then all these things are going to add up to a full assessment of the project. Okay, so now let's go to activity number 7. So activity number 7 can be writing a report. Writing a report on any type of topic pertaining to the content that you are exploring. So for writing a report, students collect data, write and share a report on a topic they research through various methods, by reading articles, watching videos, interviewing people in the target language. Then they share it with others in pairs or groups, maybe jigsaw activities like the one we did before. And you can also take this very, very far. This particular example took 2 weeks to do. So in this project, students, it's called the Nutritionist Project, and students act as patients and nutritionists. And in their role as patients, they keep a food diary for 2 weeks. This was amazing, just keeping a food diary, because for 2 weeks we all had to record what we were eating. I was participating too. It was way too much fun. And I'm a native speaker with a PhD in Spanish, and I did not know how to say brown rice cakes. I never ate them when I was in my country, and in my PhD program it never came up. So I never knew how to say it. I had to look it up, and now I know how to say brown rice cakes as well. So even somebody at my level can gain from an activity like this. So they had to keep a diary, like I said. They also had to then come back to class and pair up and take turns playing a nutritionist and a patient for an interview about their eating habits. So they had to talk about when do they, looking at their plan, when did they eat badly, when did they eat well, who was with them, how were they feeling. So talking a little bit more about the effective aspects of eating. And this was, of course, a really fun conversation for both of them. Then as nutritionists, they read an article about eating well. Also, as nutritionists, they wrote a report to be given to the patient based on the article, the food diary, and the interview. So here you have an article. Here you have the interview. Here you have the eating journal. You have to put all these together and come up with a report where you tell your patient the things that they are doing well and the things that they need to work on. And then when they come back to class, they work with the patient, or the nutritionist and the patient, and they tell each other what they think they should be doing. Imagine the amount of speaking that goes on with an activity such as this. Also, if we look at global tasks, we're looking at students narrating and describing in major time frames and supporting opinions. In content and context, where they're enriching their language with the special field of interest of nutrition and health. They're writing and speaking in formal register because they were acting as nutritionists who would be professionals. They are also writing and speaking in paragraph level. They're exploring cultural and affective aspects of eating and nutrition. And bonus, they're climbing up Bloom's taxonomy. These kids are synthesizing, they are evaluating, they're applying, they're creating, they are doing all these amazing things. They're just doing this in Spanish. So this is a definite added bonus. So here you can see a sample of one of my students keeping his food diary. It's so adorable. He was even doing little drawings. You can tell he's having fun, but this is also creating vocabulary for him. Then here's the article that they had to read about good eating habits. This was an authentic article from a nutrition magazine. Here is the intake form for the patient, and this helped focus all the different questions that would be asked for the interview. And then here is the directions for the structure of the report. This is again good scaffolding because a lot of them might not know exactly what they're supposed to include and what order. So once they do this, then they just fill in the different spaces and grow their language skills from there. And here's the third, fourth, and fifth part. And the assessment came from different sources. Again, this is a tool of differentiation. The food journal was 20 points, the patient intake form was 10, the report was 60, and the presentation of the report to the patient was 10. If I were to do this activity again, I would give a little more points to the to the speaking part. So, we're not perfect and we can always continue improving our activities for sure. All right, so our 8th activity is conducting interviews. Students can conduct interviews on any topic of any content that you might be exploring. When they are conducting interviews in the target language, they do this with people from outside the classroom. So this takes the language beyond the classroom and integrates community-based learning. Students practice formal speech, asking questions and writing, because I ask them to transcribe their interviews. And also for our heritage speakers, they get a chance to speak formally. So many of them cannot use the usted form. It is so amazing to me, the formal way to speak in Spanish. And it is very important that they do, especially because heritage speakers have such good accents that a lot of people have higher expectations of them. So they come across as very rude when they don't treat people with the formal usted. Unlike second language learners who usually, through their accent, you can tell that their language skills might not be as strong. So if they treat an elder or a professional by tú, it's a lot less problematic for them. And they don't get judged as harshly as heritage language learners do. So I think that this is really important. Also, conducting interviews is community-based learning. So in community-based learning, students learn by participating in community events or conducting research within a local language community. So this is something you can do about any topic. You just send them out to interview people about whatever topic you may be exploring. This one was very sweet. One of my students, they had to do a reflection card about it, and she said, my experience with this interview was very marvelous because my grandma opened up a lot with me. She told me a lot of things I didn't know about my family. Now I understand why I live here. I am thankful to Destiny for giving me the opportunity to study here in the United States. This was a heritage speaker who had never talked about certain things with her own grandmother, and they came up as she was interviewing her. So it can even give students an opportunity to explore their roots or the roots of other Spanish speakers, and then integrate that to their knowledge base. So I love it. All right, so number 9, writing a class book. For writing a class book, students get to take part on a very authentic type activity where there is a lot of high stakes because this is going to be a real book. So using a website such as bookemon.com, if you haven't heard of it, I invite you to check it out. It's free, and it is really an amazing website, very easy to handle. And so using a website such as bookemon.com or even low-tech means, so photocopy and making a book that way, students contribute 1 or 2 pages to a class book on a specific topic. For content, they can complete readings, do research, do interviews, whatever you would want them to do. But you do want to do some scaffolding and some give them a lot of direction on what it is that you want in the book so they can excel and exercise their language skills that way. So this book idea gave me the idea of doing a home remedies project and a home remedies book. For this book, our students had to create a collection of home remedies to be featured in a book. This was a 3-week project. So there were several steps. First, they had to get ready and print their worksheet. Second, they had to interview a Spanish-speaking person. Third, they had to conduct research on the internet. Fourth, they had to write their section, which had to have 3 parts: a narration of the story of the person that they interviewed and the home remedy that they told them about, a description of the remedy and the way that it is administered, and a description of other common cures for the malady. Then step 5 was to proofread, edit, and rewrite. And then there was more editing and rewrite, and then more editing and rewrite, because they really took this serious. It was going to be a book. And also, number 6, work on your Bookemon page. This can be an amazing project to do with any type of topic. So let me show you how this came out. Oh, but before I do that, let's talk about some of the global tasks and the content context and other things that we would be targeting. We're having them narrate and describe in major timeframes. They're enriching the language with a special field of interest. In this opportunity, it was home remedies. The text type, writing and speaking at paragraph level, accuracy, no patterns of errors, because this is going to be a book, so they really worked hard at that. And of course, exploring cultural and affective aspects of home remedies in Hispanic cultures. And the bonus, they get to write a book. They get to have a book, which they can purchase later. Not necessary because it's also virtual, as I will show you. But if they wanted it, they could even have it. Of course, I bought one. So here is the little worksheet that they had to do to complete their interview. So this would help them focus on the specific things that the book article had to have. And then modeling. When you're doing activities that they're not very used to, I think it's very important to model. And so this was my own model. I talked about my Aunt Alicia and the way she taught me about a home remedy for scars when I hit my forehead and got a scar on my forehead. So the students got to see how I wrote it, and then they could go ahead and do it as well. This is the website that I used for the activity. And you can see that now it's up on their website. You can find it there, Remedios Caseros por la clase Español 391. And this is how the book looks. This is the virtual one, but there is a hard copy of it as well. And so here it is, a little dedication page, and then the students had the chance, each one of them, to design their own page, so they could pick the color, the graphics, the way, the fonts, everything they wanted. And some of them really, really enjoyed doing this. This is one about his mother, and this one is about Evil Eye and her aunt, and then she got to build her page like she wanted it. This one, it was about nursing a sprain or any type of injury that you would have. She's a soccer player, so she would know about that. Talk about something that is important to you and a real world task. This one talked about pain and arnica, and interviewed her mom for it. This one talked about pretty skin and talked to her aunt from Puerto Rico. And this one, this one was about bad dreams. So for nightmares, and so you take an egg and you put it above the person's head while you say a prayer, and then you take the egg and you put it in water. But how fantastic to be able to explore something like this for our students. And so here's the assessment. The worksheet, low stakes assessment, gave him 15 points, a first draft, a second draft, and a final copy. And this really stresses the importance of editing and revising. And then the layout for those students who were very creative, so then they could get points for that aspect of their presentation. And that was one of my most favorite projects to ever do. I look forward to doing it again. There's one of the students who was very happy when she saw her own page in a real book. And this brings us to activity number 10, which is making a video project where they speak. You can make a video project about any aspect whatsoever, and any content for sure. So for making a video project, students create a video in which they have to speak. They narrate, describe, give opinions, hypothesize about the chosen topic within the course theme. The possibilities for these are endless. So I'm going to share 2 video projects to give you an idea of how a very simple one can be, and then how a very, very large, involved one can be. The first one was a mid-semester project. The last one is their final project, because I didn't want to have exams or anything like that, but actually a project that would really bring everything together. So let's start with the first video project. The first video project was a show and tell project. Show and tell could be done about anything, any topic, anything they want, and it could also be student chosen, talking about motivation. That's very cool. So for a show and tell project, students choose their favorite food, natural or processed, to research and present to the class in a form of a 4 to 5 minute YouTube video using formal language. And then students have to watch 5 classmate videos and write a 50-word minimum comment. You would be amazed how these students really practice before doing this. Instead of being just a course where they come and talk in front of the class, which is a good ability as well, the show and tell project on video really steps it up, because now the students know that this is going onto the web and people are going to watch it, so they rehearse, they practice unknown vocabulary, and it also gives you a chance to help them with 21st century skills. And this, I think, is very, very important. So if we're looking at some of the benefits, global tasks, narrating and describing in major time frames, in content and context, enriching their language in the special field of interest, speaking in a formal register, writing and speaking at a paragraph level, accuracy, being understood without difficulty. You definitely can work on that on a video. But also you can practice 21st century skills and create community. Talking about the 21st century skills, so many of our students today, when they are interviewed for jobs, will probably be doing a lot of interviews through Skype or some sort of web-based program. It is up to us to teach them that they need to present themselves well online. They need to think about their background, about their lighting, about the angle, because when they're out there in the job market, they need to be thinking about these things, and and a good interview can put them at the top of the list for sure. I also want to point out differentiated learning on a project like this. Students who might need more time or various takes in order to get something done because the language does not come as easy for them, get a chance to do it and redo it again until they are happy with it. And creating community, which is another aspect of this project, happens because they can't wait to see each other's projects and see what they have done, and they have to comment on it, and that is part of their grade. So you want to give them very clear directions. So I tell them before filming, pick your food stuff, pick a visual, something to show, organize the content of your presentation by aspects, make notes, practice out loud using formal language, practice any new or difficult terms, and time themselves. While they're filming, things that they can remember and take as part of their knowledge base in their whole future as human beings in this planet, sitting or standing up straight, relaxed but not too much, paying attention to what is in the camera frame, breathing, blinking, using formal language, projecting their voice, enunciating, avoiding which we all do. It's very hard not to, but you want to try to do the least possible. Looking at the camera so you can be looking at your public, and using gestures but watching out for distractive, repetitive gestures as well. So of course I had to do one because the teacher has to show that she has also participated on this. So I did one for them, and I tell you, the first time I did this was very hard. This video took me 7 times to do. And I share that with them so they know that this is not an easy task and they want to prepare for it and practice and everything else. And what did they show? Well, Nutella, Cheetos, spinach. It was so informative. I also have to say that as an instructor, this is so much more fun to grade or to assess because you end up learning a lot and all the topics are different. So this is unlike some sort of fill-in-the-blank boring thing that you have to assess. You can learn so many things from your students. It really is a very fun type of project to do. So what did they present? Well, Nutella, papaya, spinach, salmon, avocado, Cheetos, café con leche, milk, granada, strawberries, tomatoes, asparagus. So you can see, I mean, they just went crazy. But these were topics that interested them specifically. Oh, I just had to include this because I love this little guy when he says, "You're fat, but you're good fat." Avocado affirmation. In the assessment of the show and tell project, you can see that we had several aspects to be assessed. So this is a good differentiation tool. The outline, which was low stake assessment, but very important in order for them to organize, was 25 points. Responses to other videos were 25 points, and the video itself was 50 points. The video itself had several aspects: comprehension, content, organization, and delivery. So students could be assessed in different ways regarding how their video went. The second video project that I want to talk about is a much larger project, and it too can be adapted to any topic you want. So if you really wanted to have a super project that tackled so many of the things that we have been talking about in class, in the presentation, about motivation, about different abilities, about differentiation, this covers a lot of that, and I will show you how it goes. So on this final project, specifically for this class, students had to produce a 5-minute video segment for the class. For the project, they had to present and discuss a health topic from the class, or if they wanted a different one, they could certainly ask me. And after doing additional research and gathering opinions from the community throughout an interview in Spanish, the students had to write a script, read it on the air, and express an unscripted opinion. So this is done in a span of 5 weeks, and it has 5 major components. Let me show you what those are. So the components are the following. They have to first find an article, read it, and extract key vocabulary. The second component is an interview, where they interview a community member and translate and transcribe the interview. Then they write a script that explains the problem and integrates the 2 elements above. That would be what they found out in the article and also the interview. And then number 4, they produce a video where they read the script and give an unscripted opinion. I like doing this too because the scripted reading is very useful, especially for our heritage language learners, because a lot of them, they do not know how to read out loud. And so this is an ability that they can explore with this project. And then the unscripted opinion helps with the type of spontaneous speech that is also important. This also avoids students overreading too much, because they know that they get a chance to read and then they have to put it down, and now they have to read. Now they have to do an unscripted type situation. So they get both things, and you can tell as the person who's assessing when they're reading and when they're not. And number 5, watching and commenting on 8 classmates' videos and participating on a live question and answer session. So again, looking at the global tasks, you can see how this project would have narrating and describing in major timeframes, hypothesizing, speaking in the abstract, supporting opinions, and asking questions. In the content and context, they would be enriching their language within a special field of interest. For the text type, they would be writing and speaking at paragraph level and extended discourse. Accuracy, because it's a video, you would hope for no patterns of errors. And of course, they are exploring cultural and affective aspects of the area of health and well-being. So they have a work schedule, and this becomes really important on a project that has so many steps. And so on week 1, they do certain things that scaffold. So then for week 2, they do more things. For week 3, they do their first draft. For week 4, they do the rewrite. For week 5, they do the watching and participating on conversations. So you can see how a work schedule can really come in handy when you're doing a long-range project. By the way, while they were doing this, we're also doing other things in class. We're not just concentrating on the project. So this is done partly in class and part on their own time. While in class, we are doing other things. So here are some of my students presenting their different aspects of health. I was so proud of them. And some of the topics they decided to do: aging, abortion, pollution in Cuba, abortion in Nicaragua, child abuse, child labor, obesity, poverty in Florida, violence against women, stress, drug abuse, all these great topics that they got to choose. So obviously they were interesting to them and they wanted to learn more about them. And in doing so, and in producing this project and their video, they probably had to look up a lot of vocabulary, and they had to refine a lot of their grammar, and they exercised their language skills, which is what we want. For assessment, they got the article with vocabulary 10 points, the interview with the transcript 10 points, the written script 30, the video 40. So you can see that if you're good at writing, you get some points, and if you're good at speaking in the video, then you get some points as well. And then the comments and live questions and answers session also gave them points. So differentiation is built into this as well, so they can get points for things where they may be different types of abilities in the class. So if we were to look at course topics, then we could think of things such as health and well-being, but other things that I've been thinking about would be migration in the Spanish-speaking world, art in the Spanish-speaking world, history and politics in the Spanish-speaking world, gender and society, media and society, sports and fitness, health and well-being, All these topics would be interesting for a class or a unit if that were the case. But what I'm hoping is that these 10 activities really gave you some good ideas of how you can take these activities and apply them to any type of topic that you decided to explore. So maybe now you can look at the list of 10 activities that are adaptable, pick one and think, how could you transform it so it becomes about your topic, the topic that you would want to do. And in doing so, you can create new activities with things that can benefit your students. Well, this concludes the presentation on 10 activities for a content-based heritage and second language learner mixed class. I really hope that they help you start thinking about other ways that you can exercise your students' language skills so they can become stronger and stronger and grow in their proficiency. This does not happen from one day to the next, and your activities may be hit and miss at first. But I assure you that by doing project-based learning and task-based learning, your students are absolutely going to grow on their language skills. So I hope you have found this helpful, and please do not hesitate to contact me if you need any more information or if you want to share your own activities with me. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.